Not only that, I would say, like, if you are truly understanding what you're doing and you have really strong beliefs, my question to you is why. It's like it's almost self-sabotage by doing this. Now, when I ask people, what are you putting in your 401k? And they say, hey, I'm putting in 10% of my income. And I go, well, what are you getting for a match by your employer? And they go, I don't know. Or maybe they say, I'm getting 3%. Or maybe they say, I'm getting 1.5%. Or maybe they tell me they're getting nothing. My belief is if you are getting a match, you should contribute into your 401k, or you can contribute up to that match, because that's an automatic 100% rate of return on that money. And therefore, that's a benefit that negates the downsides of what a qualified account is at this point in time. Hey, what's going on, cash flow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180. In this video, we're gonna be talking about the number one mistake that people make with their money. And this is not gonna be a typical mistake that I think you think about when you think about mistakes that people make with their money. Usually it's like not spending in the right ways, not saving, not investing in the right ways. But ultimately, what I want to talk about in this video is the mindset that people have around their money, and the mindset of thinking too short term and not long term enough. So here's what I mean by this. When I say the number one mistake people make with their money is they are thinking on a year-to-year basis on what to do with their money and not thinking long enough out and thinking from like a 10-year perspective, or like maybe a 15-year perspective on what their objectives are. And so the challenge with this is when you're thinking on an annualized basis and this year-to-year basis, what happens is you make a lot of short-term mistakes. And the bottom line is, when we think about how money works in our lives, with our personal lives, with our investment planning, with our businesses, with any of this stuff, the environment right now is going to change over the next 10 to 15 years. Now, it may change dramatically, it may change marginally, but the bottom line is we know it's not going to be exactly the same as it is right now. Now, if you go backwards and we look back in time, let's say 40 years, we can look back at the beginning of a lot of these institutions that we lean on today as if they are kind of financial foundations or cornerstone strategies that people utilize in their lives. I'm gonna use an example, just because I think it's an extreme example, and I think it's something that a lot of people participate in, and it will help you. And so that example is 401ks and qualified plans. Now, so I'm 42 years old. I know it's hard for me to admit that, but I'm getting gray. I'm losing my hair a little bit. It's crazy. But here's the deal. When we go back to when I was first born in 1980, and from 1980 to 1982, ultimately, those were the years where 401ks were kind of injected into the market. And a lot of people said, hey, 401ks are really good. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to say they're good or they're bad. It's not good or bad. I don't believe there is a good financial product. I don't believe there's a good financial vehicle. I don't believe there's a bad one. I think, is it good for you? Do you understand it? Is it bad for you? Do you not understand it? And you got to understand the moving parts on the chessboard, right? Like, at the end of the day, I look at money as a game, right? It is just a game. And if you don't understand the rules of the game, if you don't understand the moving parts of the game, it's impossible to win that game, right? And so here's the deal. We go back to that time frame in 1980, 81, 82, 83, when 401ks were becoming popular. And what was the environment like? Why did 401ks, and IRAs, and qualified accounts, why did they get brought into the marketplace? Why were they introduced with such vigor and excitement and whatnot? It's because of the fact that back then, the top marginal tax rate was 70%. Think about that, 70%. Top marginal rate today is 39.6%, right? And so back then, if you look at it, once again, it's not good or bad. It's that if we go back then and we had the ability to defer taxes at a high tax rate environment and then be able to withdraw at a low tax rate environment, that makes sense. But the bottom line is the environment around us has changed a lot, right? And so right now, I think it's easy when we look around and we say, well, where do we think taxes are gonna go? I think I'm not trying to push my perspective on anybody, but most of the people that I speak with believe, because of the political uncertainty, because of the national debt, because of the unfunded liabilities, because of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all these different things that are going on because of rising interest rates. They believe taxes are going to go up. I happen to fall into that camp. I believe that very emphatically, very strongly. And so because I believe that, I want to make sure that my financial strategy is 1000% in alignment with what my beliefs are. This is the thing that kind of blows my mind a lot of times, is like when I talk to people and I go, hey, how do you feel about all these things that I just listed off? You know, taxes and government and unfunded liabilities and national debt and rising interest rates and all this stuff. I talk to people and they go, yeah, I think that's going to happen. I think rates are going up. And then I say, well, what are you doing for your financial strategy? What are you doing for your financial plan? Where are you saving your money? Where are you investing your money? And most people are putting their money in 401ks and IRAs in qualified accounts, TSPs, 457s, there's 403bs, all these types of accounts, right? They're all kind of under the umbrella of qualified accounts. And so when I say this and I go, hey, you believe this over here, but do you realize that what you're doing with your money is completely uncorrelated, disconnected, in polar opposing like effect with what you believe? And this is the problem. Like, most people don't realize that your financial strategy is 100% out of alignment with your beliefs. And so therefore, it's a really hard thing to get behind, right? Like, you're never going to be successful in anything if that's the case. Not only that, I would say, like, if you are truly understanding what you're doing and you have really strong beliefs, my question to you is why. It's like, it's almost self-sabotage by doing this. Now, when I ask people, what are you putting in your 401k? And they say, hey, I'm putting in 10% of my income. And I go, well, what are you getting for a match by your employer? And they go, I don't know. Or maybe they say, I'm getting 3%. Or maybe they say, I'm getting 1.5%. Or maybe they tell me they're getting nothing. My belief is, if you are getting a match, you should contribute into your 401k, or you can contribute up to that match, because that's an automatic 100% rate of return on that money. And therefore, that's a benefit that negates the downsides of what a qualified account is at this point in time, right? So you have to look at the wins and losses, the benefits and the drawbacks of these types of scenarios. And so, you know, when it comes to thinking long term, I guess I'm trying to bring this back here now. When it comes to the problem of people thinking short term, I should say, with their money, what I'm talking about is this idea of, why do people put money into this qualified account? Once again, I'm using this one example. People put their money there because they want to defer taxes, right? They want to get a tax deduction. So if you go talk to any accountant, any CPA, 99% of CPAs their first default thing for this year is going to say, well, let's put your money in a 401k, or let's put your money in a qualified account, because you're going to get a tax deduction, right? So why not maximize that deduction and reduce your taxable income today? The problem is, when you do that, you're thinking about your tax liability on a year-to-year basis, but you don't realize that probably right now you're going to be increasing your lifetime tax liability, right? Because if I told you that you could defer money today at, let's call it 22%, if you're the average American paying about 20 to 22%, average middle class American paying 20 to 22% on your taxes, if you get to defer that today at 22% and pay 30% later, does that make much sense to you? You may feel better about it today, but what we have to do from a financial efficiency perspective is make sure that our long-term tax liability is reduced as much as possible. And this is where I talk about the importance of controlling your money, right? So when you think short-term, yeah, you may feel good, but the bottom line is that short-term decision is probably going to have a long-term ramification. And so the other component of this is like, okay, the market goes through cycles, right? So what I want to do here is, I'm actually going to open up something here, and I want to do this. I'm going to talk about this. Let me just close that down. Okay. So when we talk about market cycles, all right. So when we talk about market cycles, this is what we do. So the market goes up and it comes down, it goes up, it comes down, it goes up, it comes down, it goes up, it comes down, right? So you can kind of see this pattern of it going up, coming down, so on and so forth. But the bottom line is the time that you really make a lot of money, that you can really make big wins in the economy, is when, Warren Buffett says make money when there's blood in the streets. This is what he's talking about, is this concept of making sure that you are doing well when times get rough. So these cycles are recessionary cycles right here, these times, right? This is when the economy is going through a reset for whatever reason. Think the 2000, dot-com bubble, think 2008, think 2020, right? These cycles happen. I could go back and I could go like 1994 was over here, right? So these recessions happen. When is the next one going to be? I think 2023, because the recovery between 2020 and 23 was just injection of printed money and stimulus that really should never have happened in the first place. And so when we think short term, what's happening is we're trying to get these benefits in these short term blips, but the problem is we're not thinking long term enough. We're not thinking about creating opportunity. We're not thinking about the fact that these cycles happen in 10 or in 8 to 12 year increments on average. And so what we need to be is, instead of trying to make money when everybody else is making money, we need to utilize these good times to build our financial chests, to build our financial fortresses, and build the walls up around us to galvanize our success. And when we do that, we basically need to stop focusing on investing to try to make a lot of money. Stop investing when everybody else is investing, because if you're doing what everybody else does, you're going to get what everybody else has, and 95% of the people in this world are not getting the results that they want with their money. And so this is what everybody else does. You want to, sure, you can do okay, you feel like you're doing well, but if you don't have the right financial structure, you're going to fall down and you're going to lose everything, not everything, but you're going to take a big step backwards, rather than if you just save, and then when everybody else is struggling in these down cycles, in these cycles right here, when everybody else is struggling here, and in 2023, when everybody else hits this point in time and they start to struggle, right? That's going to be a situation where if you just use this time right now to save, and this is the next 18 months or so is my guess, I'll say maybe 6 to 18 months. Right now, use this time to save as much money away as you possibly can, because you need to think long term and realize what the opportunity is if you buy really low. And I mean, honestly, this could go way down here to pre 2008 levels, the way that this is going, because if you understand QE 1, 2, 3, and then you have all the money printing and everything that came from the pandemic expenditures and the CARES Act and all that stuff, this whole last, let's just call it 12 or 13 years, has been a real train wreck from a monetary policy perspective, right? And so we have to think about that and realize, like, what are the consequences from that? And like, how is that going to, not just what are the consequences, but how are those consequences going to impact you? And where can you find opportunity in that, right? Because what is the market cycle going to look like due to that, and how can you ultimately take advantage of it? And so when we think about this from a macro level instead of a micro level is like, what's your life look like just this year? You have your income, the things this year, and you're trying to control your taxes, you're trying to control your expenses, you're trying to make sure you invest a little bit every single year. But the bottom line is, if you think long term instead of short term, you're going to have the ability to reduce your taxes from a lifetime perspective. You're going to have the ability to have more control of your money, and you're not going to tie it up into qualified plans. When you control your money, you're going to be able to have access to it in these times of hardship, rather than people in 401ks in 2000 that went down, rather than having 401ks in 2008 that went way down. And that's why, 60 Minutes, if you look it up, go look up 60 Minutes on, just do a 60-minute 401k search on YouTube. You'll watch this where they talk about the dangers of 401ks and how people got massacred in 2008 due to 401ks because of the fact that people didn't do, very simplistically, what I'm talking about, right? And that is what it comes down to. And so my encouragement is, think long term, but utilize this short term period over the next 6 to 18 months to set yourself up for long-term success. And my promise to you is, if you do that, you're going to have more guarantees in your life. You're going to have more stability. You're going to build your own emergency fund. You're going to build an opportunity fund. You're going to be able to prepare to be able to set yourself up to thrive instead of, suffer during the times when everybody else around you is struggling. And you're going to be able to set yourself up for a plan that you can get off the hamster wheel. You don't have to save and try to plan for the next 40 years to hit retirement. You should be able to be financially independent in the next 10 to 15 years at the most, even if you're starting with very, very little right now. So that's it. If you have any questions at all, comment in the comment section below. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, that way you're notified every time I launch a new video. Till next time, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon. See ya.